What's up, my dudes? What's going on, Spencer? What's gotten into you, bro? A realistic graphics update for No Man's Sky? Really? Really? Come on now. I understand this is a crazy sort of idea here, and a lot of people have thought about this, and I want to make this a big point. Trust me, I love the way No Man's Sky looks currently. I love the whole design of it. I think it was the right way to make the game. I think it's a really cool thing. I have no problem with it. It's not like I'm saying that it sucks the way that they made the current game or anything like that. I love the, sci-fi book cover type of aesthetic to it and all of that. Trust me, I'm 100% down for it, dog. I love it. Like, don't get that aspect of it twisted. What I'm trying to say, though, is I'm just trying to sort of open up your mind a little, kind of make you imagine, give you the idea of just what if you were able to play a game like No Man's Sky. Not even necessarily that it has to be No Man's Sky or a update to No Man's Sky or whatever. It could be a standalone type of thing, a side thing where you could still have these graphics and a whole different graphical, better graphical system to it or whatever, more realistic. I hate to say better because it's not really better. It's just more of a realistic, not as cartoony. But could you imagine this sort of game with a higher, more realistic type of feeling to it with the aesthetics of everything? Could you just imagine? I mean, that would be so cool. Like, I can just imagine landing on a new planet that has more of a realistic graphical look to it, and just how alien, that's the biggest thing I think of in my head, how much more alien they could make the worlds look like that, with that more realistic type of graphical look to it. A lot of you guys out there probably know the game Planet Nomads. It's kind of like No Man's Sky, but not nowhere near to the extent of it, but it does have like a lot of different building. I think you can actually build vehicles in that game and stuff, but not as many of the quintillion planets and that whole aspect of it. But that game has a very, very similar graphical look to No Man's Sky, right? It's almost got this just kind of a cartoony look to it, and it's a really cool way to experience the game. Like I'm trying to say, it's a very cool way to see it. It's like you're living in a sci-fi book cover to a certain extent, but there are like certain kind of limitations to it, and it's one of those things where it's like, I never want to see this sort of No Man's Sky just completely go away or get replaced, like this sort of look to it. But what I'm trying to say is like, it'd be cool to see some sort of alien exploration, planet exploration, where there's like unlimited planets and you're going into this random world that you've never seen before. And maybe no one's ever seen it. Like, could you imagine how cool, like, the creature discovery element and the underwater element in a super realistic graphical game? Like, that would be crazy. Not even like necessarily super realistic, just not as cartoony as this. That's all I'm trying to get at, And I hate to bring like PUBG graphics up because I know that's not, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. I know that's not like super amazing graphics, but it does have a certain look to it. And it's something I can kind of compare to that, like, because a lot of you guys have probably played PUBG at this point, but whereas, the current No Man's Sky is almost more like, not quite like Fortnite graphics, but a little bit more towards that direction. But the difference is with a game like this, everything about it, going to a new planet, could you imagine having like PUBG type of graphics, but in a No Man's Sky game? You know how crazy some of the creatures would look and how real of an experience that could give you, being like in real life, but on a totally new world, totally new planet, but it's in real life. It's not a sci-fi book cover. It's like fucking real life. You've landed on a new planet, like you're landing on Saturn for the first time. You have no idea what's there, and it looks like it graphically. Would that not be sick? That's what I'm trying to get at. Almost like if you were able to literally just hop in a spaceship in real life and go explore the solar systems and the galaxies and the universes and land on planets and see what's there, and the water have a super realistic look to it and all that kind of stuff. The trees have a realistic look, bushes, you know, kind of how PUBG's got that sort of look to it. I just think it would be so interesting if there was ever that game created or ever that update made or whatever. I don't know, you know, how it would be made and all the little specifics of it and all that, but I'm just saying, I just want to, you know, bring up the idea of it because it is a very cool thought. Like it is, could you imagine the underwater? Like, oh my God, if it was realistic and had super big, amazing, crazy, weird creatures and stuff like that, but they had a realistic look to them. Like you could have a super alienated type of creature or biome or whatever, or plant or alien rock or whatever the case may be. You could have it super alien like a sci-fi book cover, but just with a more realistic kind of aesthetic, you know, a more realistic look to it. Not so much like smoothed off cartoony edges, but more hardcore actual graphical fidelity to it, right? So, and at times, No Man's Sky can give you a bit of a realistic feel. Like you can see these certain trees right here and some of the bush with some of the new updates they've come out with. Like this kind of has a bit of a realistic look to it when you're just running through the trees like this. But just in an overall kind of the way that some of the lighting, like you're never going to hop down on a planet that's just totally pitch black. That's one aspect of it. Think about that. Think about having like PUBG graphics, but nighttime, right? Like pretty dark nighttime, landing on the nighttime side of a planet. You've never been there. It's got realistic graphics in it, right? And realistic like shading and all that kind of stuff. And you're seeing these crazy creatures, could potentially be predatorial, all that kind of stuff. Crazy underwater creatures, everything. And you've never seen them before. No one's ever seen them. Could you imagine it would almost turn it like into a horror game at some point, like a really exciting experience on certain nighttime sides of some planets, right? Once you start thinking about it, it's just kind of hard to get those images out of your head. It's hard for me to stop thinking about how amazing that would be, how cool that would actually be in a game like this. It's one thing to be like, oh, we'll have one planet that's like realistic, but you got to think of it like the whole game, but being more with a realistic look to it. You know, every time you go to a planet, how much more kind of that scary aspect to it and like, ooh, spooky, what's that new creature over there that I've never seen before? Or hopping down in an underwater cave and you're like, oh my God, this is kind of like what's going to pop out and get me, you know, that whole side of it. Sometimes this game can give you the feeling like you're just looking at a creature and it's hard to really give you a scare element. And the fact, like I said before, that the nighttime doesn't get super dark. There's a lot of little aspects to it that, you know, it lacks that like really giving you a spook feeling or a real feeling to it. So, but it's not just that. I mean, it's every aspect of it. You know, I could just imagine humongous underwater creatures, but they have a realistic look to them. But you can still have it alienated, but just real. You know, like, I'm sure you've probably seen some of those images in certain movies and games and stuff out there that's really super sci-fi, you know, quite out there type shit, but it's got a realistic look to it. And I love that kind of look. I don't know, I've always been a fan of that, like sci-fi, but it looks real. You know, almost like if you could have in real life, but it's sci-fi, that kind of thing. You know, I'm very fascinated with that because we don't know what's out there. Everyone thinks, oh, it's sci-fi, like all these alien, extraterrestrial, you know, crazy planet biomes, all this kind of stuff. That's not real. That's, you know, that's sci-fi, bro. Oh, do you know? Have you been to every planet in this universe? Have you ever even been to another planet other than Earth in this universe? I don't think so. Hey, you for damn sure ain't been to all them stars you see at night. So you're going to tell me you know what's out there? No, ain't none of us know what's out there. So that's what gives me that cool, like, creepy feeling of, like, all this stuff we see in sci-fi movies and all that. It's like, just imagine that, but in real life, like, literally envision in your mind, you know, stepping down on something that's 100 times the size of Earth, and you've got all these new creatures and life forms and all that you've never seen before. Some of the stuff you've seen on TV that's like, you know, in the deepest, darkest depths of the ocean, all those crazy creatures down there, but they're massive, and they're on this brand new planet in real life, and it's got these cool new biomes, but they're real looking. You know, with No Man's Sky, you just don't get that. You don't get that, like, realistic sci-fi feeling. It's more of a cartoony, like a, and when you say sci-fi book cover, it has that feeling, but just to a certain extent. You know, I would even almost irk a little bit more towards the side of it. You know, there's a lot of that like 70s sci-fi book cover stuff that has a realistic look to it, but No Man's Sky just goes for this more simplistic, cartoony feel, and it has its positives and it has its negatives. And I'm going to reiterate here, because a lot of you guys are going to get all butthurt, and it's not, trust me, I'm not trying to change No Man's Sky. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's not the point of this video. I'm just trying to open up your mind a little, dog. Like, just think about what if we ever got that kind of game. No Man's Sky is what it is, and I love this game for what it is. Like, graphically and everything. It's a cool game, but I just always imagine in my mind, like, how amazing that would be if it had just the level of, like, a PUBG style graphical look, and how much bigger the worlds would seem and feel. You know, sometimes in this game it can almost have such a cartoony look to it that you lose your entire point of the game, which is like feeling like you're in a universe, planet-sized planets, this, that, and another, right? It can almost lose that because of how cartoony it looks. It just doesn't feel real sometimes. It feels, but not real in the sense of like cool sci-fi. It's not real in the sense of like, this is not real at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't even have the fidelity of being real. Like, it can never be real. This isn't real. What is real life? Are we in real life, or are we in a simulation? I don't know. But either way, you get what I'm trying to say, though. Like, if this was like PUBG graphics, just the scale of the planet would feel so much bigger and give you a more immersion type of feel to it just overall. And I just imagine like the creatures of a realistic graphical look, but that's the difference. You know, you think about, oh, what's going to look like a T-Rex in a, you know, like a real life graphical video game or whatever, but you don't understand. With No Man's Sky, every time you jump down onto a new planet, there could be creatures no one's ever even imagined before, no one's ever even seen before. You know, the procedural generation of the game can create anything. So you imagine any sort of creature in your mind possible, but looking like a realistic graphical look. That's just insane when you think about that. And the realistic biomes, but yet it's any sort of biome you could potentially imagine in your mind. I just think of that in my head. It'd be quite a difficult task to really put all that together. Now, there is a game called Dual Universe. Some of you guys might have seen that. It's a bit of a kind of like No Man's Sky, not really. There's a lot of games out there that are kind of like No Man's Sky, but not really. But I think Dual Universe has a little bit more of that realistic-esque look to it. But obviously it's not, it doesn't have quintillion planets. I don't even think it really has a whole lot of creatures on it either. Like, you know, you're not really like Christopher Columbus of outer space. It's more of like an MMO style, almost like a, you know, you're creating like really big groups and guilds, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's just a different game. But what I'm trying to get at, though, is, wow, did I circle all the way back around to that one spot? I thought this was an area that would take me all the way to that island, but holy crap, I think I circled all the way back around this one spot without even realizing it. But either way, you guys get what I'm saying, though. Like, that Dual Universe, I think the graphics on that are a little bit closer to realistic style, and it just looks so cool. I don't know. There's just something about it, that realistic graphical look versus more of the cartoony look. And you never know. Maybe we would never even have had this. And I think this is probably a thing here. Like, we might not would have ever even have had this No Man's Sky. Oh, look at how cool that's placed out there on that island, dude. That is sick. Look at that. Wow. Well, you know, we may not have ever even had this game if they had it in their head and vision to make this more of a realistic graphical game. It would have put a lot more limitations on it, right? They might not would have ever have been able to make it on this level. So that's right. That's like one aspect of it. You got to take what you can get, and it's an amazing game for what it is. So that's kind of the way it is, but I just can't help to think, like, man, I want that game, regardless of what No Man's Sky is or isn't or whatever it's ever going to become. I want a game like No Man's Sky, basically a Christopher Columbus of outer space, like you hopped in a spaceship in real life and you can go anywhere in the galaxy, discover new planets, new creatures, new biomes, new rocks, plants, everything about it, right? But having it where it feels more realistic, like you'd be doing it in real life. I think that would be a cool as hell game, dude. Like, oh my god, that'd be so cool. And then if you could experience something like that, maybe in VR someday, that would be like another level to it. But yeah, I'm thinking in my head like super tall mushrooms, but like realistic graphical. You know, oh man, it's just such a cool way to look at it. And you know, obviously realistic water physics, like realistic running rivers and waterfalls and all that kind of cool stuff. Lava, you know, realistic lava in games and all that, but in a procedurally generated universe like how No Man's Sky is. So it's such a cool thought process and idea. I'm sure some other people have thought about that as well. There's a lot of people that say that and they're hating on the graphics of No Man's Sky. Like, oh, dude, that looks terrible. Oh, my God. That's not me. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just simply trying to open up a cool, you know, sort of thought and idea of a game that could be like this. And No Man's Sky is the best sort of game design idea that I can kind of put it on top of and compare it to, but right, like so I have to kind of compare it to this game and say No Man's Sky with a realistic graphical update, but it's not me saying I hate these graphics or anything like that, just making that clear. So either way, I'd love to see what you guys think down below in the comments. You know, if you think that game would be cool, or if you know, you wouldn't want to see that kind of game, and why you wouldn't want to see a realistic graphical No Man's Sky game like that. But I love the graphics of the current No Man's Sky. I love the you know, type of feel to it. Definitely, it has a charm to it, right? And if you make it realistic graphics, it's going to lose that charm that it had. I get that. I understand that. You know, goddamn, the internet world, man. They get such a hater mentality instantly. You have to sit there and explain yourself 1,000 times over for people to realize, like, no, I'm not hating on the graphics of No Man's Sky, man. I'm not trying to change No Man's Sky. Just having some cool ideas out here, that's all. So it's just something to think about. You know, if you're a No Man's Sky fan, just try to lay down at night in your bed and just sit there and think about a game like No Man's Sky, every aspect of it, but realistic graphics. You know, just think about that. Just let it ponder on your mind a little, and you'll come up with some insane ideas in your head, man. You'll come up with some really cool stuff. Like if you start thinking about the creatures, but realistic, the water and the biomes, but realistic, and landing on something that looked realistic, that whole kind of thing. It's a cool way to look at it, man, for sure. So either way, appreciate you guys watching all the videos. Later, dudes.